You just have to like apply the faith. And you may not know what it looks like, and there's going to be more restrictions with it, but that's when you got to lean into it more. Welcome back to the Astrology Report, this time for March 27th through April 2nd of 2023. My name is Cam White. Make sure you like this video to boost the algorithm. Make sure you comment your opinions of whether you love me or hate me or just want to boost the algorithm. And make sure you subscribe so you never miss a video. This week is much more exciting than last week, although again, we've all, like when I say we all, most astrologers agree, March is the craziest month. Last week was really kind of the craziness moving into the crazy part of it. This week is much more exciting. So let's go ahead and let's go ahead and jump straight into it. Monday, the moon is going to be making a sextile to Mercury and Jupiter. I ended last week with the moon just applying to Mercury and Jupiter and talking a little bit about like venting to people. But that exact sextile to both of those planets happens early Monday morning. Then the moon will square Neptune, and we have the Mercury-Jupiter conjunction on Monday. This is really exciting. A few reasons. One, the moon, as it's in Gemini, we're talking about our emotions, we're talking about our feelings, we're talking about our day-to-day vibe, our day-to-day mood. It's in Gemini. We're expressing things. We're vocalizing things. We're talking about things. And again, this is our first moon in Gemini transit without Mars being there. So it's not just like angry or aggressive or frustrating. It's actually like just nice just to talk about things. And the moon's going to be making a sextile to Mercury and Jupiter, where Mercury and Jupiter in Aries, we're very blunt. We're very confrontational. We're very like, this is what we want to sink our teeth into. This is what we want to attack. This is what we want to confront. And Mercury's there. So like our mental attitude is also in alignment with that. And so we're expressing, we're talking about those things. All of the ideas are rushing to our head. Then later on, the moon is going to be making a square to Neptune where you might kind of talk yourself into an oblivion. Like, have you ever like got into something, like you were like, oh, that looks cool, let me look more into that, and you got more information, and then the more information you got, the more confused you got? Kind of like probably when you first got into astrology, you're like, wait, what's my rising sign? Wait, asteroids? Wait, time lords? Wait, what? Like, that's kind of what Monday's going to be like. But the awesome part about Monday is the Mercury-Jupiter conjunction. This is wonderful. Here's the thing with this. The reason why is there's a few reasons. One, I talked a lot about last week about Jupiter and Aries. You know, what are our beliefs? What is our faith tied into? Jupiter's about opportunities. Jupiter's about abundance. You don't get that abundance. You don't get that opportunity without taking aggressive action, without like starting a war, without starting a fire. Mercury is opposite to Jupiter. So for example, where's Jupiter? Jupiter rules Sagittarius. Mercury rules Gemini. Jupiter rules Pisces, Mercury rules Virgo. These two planets rule signs that are opposite to one another. And this is something that Rhetorius brings up. Rhetorius is an ancient astrologer. And he says, in fact, he's actually one of the first ancient astrologers that bring up why Mercury rules the signs opposite to Jupiter. And he says, Mercury and Jupiter are opposite to one another because Mercury is about rationale, and Jupiter, like, in order to have faith, it requires a absence of rationale. And so why I like this conjunction is while Jupiter's all about faith and hope, and a lot of the times you just have to have faith without seeing what's in front of you. Sometimes you have to take that leap of faith. Mercury conjoining Jupiter is that fucking click moment of just being like, holy shit, I see it. Like, wow, this is making sense. Mercury is like a microphone and like a messenger, and it's on top of Jupiter. So this is like receiving a message, receiving some type of insight into this area about where's the growth opportunity? Where are your beliefs at? Did you have hope? Did you still do what you need to do and have faith even if it didn't look like you had that? Mercury conjoining Jupiter is receiving a message of that is a little bit big, but that is opportunistic, that is abundant, that is positive. This is honestly my favorite highlight of this week because this looks like, in my opinion, just having that clicking moment of like, oh, this is why I've been doing this. This is why I've been, working all this way to get to this point. Everything is starting to come together at this point, at least mentally and spiritually, which I think when you can have a mental spiritual connection is one of the strongest connections that you can get. It's like mind, body, spirit, right? So I love this conjunction. I think it's absolutely great. We get into Tuesday, and on Tuesday, the moon's going to ingress into Cancer. It's going to conjoin Mars and then trine Saturn. Tuesday is, I don't want to just say bad, okay? The reason why my first inclination is to say bad is because Water signs are about emotions. The moon is going to be aspecting both malefic planets. But one of the highlights we have this week is Mars is going to be trining Saturn. So we can't sit here and say that this is all bad because there's a supportive aspect between these two planets. And I want to just talk about this on a personal level because I think as the moon ingresses into Cancer for the next like month or two, when we have these moon Cancer ingresses, the moon is going to be hitting Mars. Mars is, fights. Mars is anxiety. Mars is, frustration. Mars is anger. And it's in Cancer. There's some kind of like, emotional resentment that we have that's hard to act out. Like, it's easier to be withdrawn and, stuff it away than it is to act things out. And as the moon conjoins Mars, I think there's this really emotional sensitivity that's going on here. But then the moon trines Saturn, where it's really asking you, like, how faithful are you going to be? Saturn is about discipline, maturity, time, wisdom, old people, and it's in Pisces. Again, we're talking about like structures and authority figures dissolving and being a little bit more liquid. But as the moon makes a trine to Saturn after this, this is like, hey, you know that you needed to do this. And you may not know your why right now, but what's more important is that you did it. You know what I mean? The moon will conjoin Mars, where you're going to have to do something that is of necessity that you need to take care of. That's not going to feel good. Like for me, in fact, I've actually seen a few Sagittarius risings also comment this. I've been behind on my taxes forever. I have, however, now got like 3 or 4 years paid off. And I have a feeling when this happens is when the big bill is going to come in, and it's not going to feel good, but I need to pay my taxes. Like, I don't want to give the government money for so many reasons. I don't really believe in any of the things that my money is going towards, but I know that I need to do it. Like, I don't feel good not doing that. It's been weighing on me for a very long time, and I'm finally at a point in my life where I can sit here and focus and have the money to pay off all of my taxes. Mars goes into my 8th house of taxes. It's not going to feel good for me. But it's trining Saturn. I got to do this shit. And Saturn's my time lord. And so that's just like an example. And I can sit here and say, as a Gen Z, and not even as a Gen Z, a lot of people can relate to this. Like, well, I believe in the idea of taxes if all my money is just going into like a war in Ukraine and it does it, like, I still don't have healthcare. Still, like, the roads suck. Still don't have, free colleges. But I got to pay all this tax, but the billionaires don't have to pay tax pretty much for the most part. Yeah. And so I bring this up because I just want to share my own personal story with this, because this is a very frustrating thing for me. Like, and there's things in your life that are frustrating for you, that we have all of our reasons why a certain area of our life is frustrating, why we don't want to do it. And we build up all of these reasons and all of these excuses, but all of that is just a way of rationalizing why you don't have to do something that you need to do. And this is that moment of like, Mars is in Cancer. You need to do something. You need to protect. You need to defend. Mars in Cancer, and I've talked about this before quite a bit. And I have a lot of new followers though. Shout out to all y'all. So I'll bring this up for you guys. My dad was a firefighter, and in Southern California, where all the fires pretty much happen, a lot of people think like firefighters. You go into a home, you douse it with water. When there's wildfires, a lot of the wildfires are just uncontrollable because it's usually really windy. Everything's dry because they don't do controlled fires. And no, it's not climate change that is why there's so many fires. It's because we don't actually manage the forest. And that's a whole nother reason, a whole nother wormhole to go down. But because of that, these wildfires just go out of control. And so what firefighters typically do is they focus on protecting homes. And I bring this up because, for one, Mars and a water sign, like usually literally using water to fight, but they don't necessarily just attack the fire. All they do is protect and defend homes, so the fire will just burn out at some point, and it causes the minimal damage possible to people's homes and property. And that's like, and he had Mars in Cancer. That's why I bring that up. And it's such a great example of Mars in Cancer, where it's like, you can't fight this fire. This fire is out of control, but you need to do what you can to protect something rather than letting it all go to devastation. And so as the moon goes into Cancer and conjoins Mars, this is like, it's kind of like that moment of like, hey, we're in the middle of this situation. What do you need to do right now to protect and defend things? And you need to do it. And you also have the support of Saturn doing this. Yeah, you should be doing this. Saturn is giving you the green light to say, you need to protect and defend. Let's say Saturn was in Aries squaring Mars. This would be like, you need to protect and defend the homes, but, the roads are blocked, or your captain or, your chief is telling you, no, you need to do X, Y, and Z. That would be like authority structures getting in the way of you doing this. This is not that case. The authority structures are allowing you to say, hey, you need to protect and defend this. This is the green light. Go ahead. So do what you need to do on Tuesday. Tuesday's a really good thing, a really good day to just like, you know what you need to do. You know what you need to take care of, and it's not going to feel good because, again, I can't imagine being a firefighter and just like, letting a fire just go and being like, I wish I could do something about it. But what's more important is the homes and the people and making sure it doesn't spread to where everyone's lives are ruined. And, it's kind of like cutting your losses essentially. So Tuesday's really interesting for that. Wednesday, the moon is going to make a sextile to Venus. It will then square Jupiter and Mercury. So I actually really like Wednesday for an election. The reason being is the moon is going to contact both benefics. The moon's in Cancer, sextiling Venus and Taurus. This is like, Venus is our values, property, what we enjoy. And as the moon's in Cancer, sextiling it, it's like, cool, maybe there's a wildfire raging, but you were able to protect your stuff and no one lost any of their property. No one lost, I can't imagine losing personal photos. For me, most of my family members are dead. And so I have all of my family's documents from the 1700s. And I would just be devastated if I lost any of that stuff. And this is one of those days where it's moon and Cancer, sextiling Venus and Taurus. Cool. You did what you needed to do and you were able to protect what you have and what you value. Venus will conjoin Uranus, which is interesting. And we'll talk about that. But the moon will then square Mercury and Jupiter, where there is this frustrating part about it where Mercury and Jupiter and Aries, we want to go big. We want to we want to just confront and we just want to attack and let's go after the wildfire. And so there's this kind of feeling of for example, I watched some cop pullover videos because they're oftentimes very illuminating on so many things. But every now and then I've seen a video where someone steals the cop car and the cop is just I watched this one where this guy broke into this guy's house. And the guy was like, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to break in, whatever. And then they were going to arrest him. They put him in the back of the car. And then the guy just stole the police vehicle. And the cop was dealing with the homeowners. And they're these old people, they were really nice. And he just steals his car. And this cop was just fuck. I want to go and chase this guy, but I can't. So now I have to deal with the people that are right here. I can't just go run off. I'm here where I'm at. And that's kind of Wednesday where it's you want to be in the fight, but something takes you away from that where you can't be in the fight. The moon sextiling Venus and Taurus is hey, whatever you have in front of you is good enough. You're going to want to do more. You're going to want to say I need to do more. I need to conquer all of this. And you might have 20,000 things on your to-do list and you can't do all of that. For example, with my tax situation, maybe I'm oh, I want to pay my taxes and then get this done and this done and this done. But because whatever situation comes up, maybe I have to put off these other things that I really want to do that I have all this inspiration for because I'm still in the middle of taking care of something. That's kind of what this is on Wednesday. You're going to want this urge to, go and attack this, go and attack that. But you have to take care of what is in front of you. I still really like Wednesday as far as an election goes. The moon's contacting both benefics pretty much at the same time. It separates from Venus, applies to Jupiter. And then after the moon squares Jupiter, it's applying to Mercury, where this is kind of for that cop example, he has the radio. He can still listen in and know what's going on the radio and know if they get him or not. You know what I mean? There's still some sort of line of communication to where you still feel like you're in the fight, but you're not exactly. So Wednesday's kind of frustrating in a lot of ways, but I want you to see the good side of it, which is the good side being, hey, you did what you need to do. You're doing what you need to do. There's something of value to be gained from here, and there's also a lesson to be learned from this. It's Jupiter and Aries, something I think I'm really into history. But one of my favorite parts about history is food for the military operations. You have to understand World War II, all these wars that we go into, they got to be feeding these soldiers. And that's not an easy job. That is a lot of logistics, a lot of planning, all of that kind of good stuff. And I kind of forgot the example I wanted to use with that. But it's taking care of what you need to take care of, getting some type of value from it, feeling like you're there, but not necessarily being there at the same time, if that makes sense. Well, another way you could look at it is, one time I went to a football game, an NFL game, and I learned that watching an NFL, like while you might think, oh, I'm going to go to the football game, it's going to be so much fun. Watching a football game from home is 10,000 times better than being at the actual game. You're not missing out on anything. That's kind of like this. It's like you have your food, you have your snacks and everything, and everyone is like at the stadium, like, rah, and everyone's drunk and everything like that. And you're like, man, I really wish I was there, but hey, at least I'm home and I can like sit on my couch and I get like the play-by-play, like the recaps and everything like that. So it will sort of feel like a disappointment in some sense, but you have to just be grateful for what is there and what you do have. Thursday's a lot going on. The moon will trine Neptune as it's in the last degrees of Cancer. It will then ingress into Leo and go opposite Pluto. This one is a kicker. Then Mars will trine Saturn and Venus conjoins Uranus. Thursday is really the big day, in my opinion. Thursday, moon's at the last degrees of Cancer. It's going to trine Neptune. You know, there's not much to say about that simply because I think the moon ingressing into Leo and going opposite Pluto is a way bigger deal. And the reason being is like when Pluto first ingressed, we had that moon square to Pluto. And by the way, I'm recording this. Today is March 15th. So this is 2 weeks out essentially. So like whatever happens with Pluto and Aquarius in my timeline right now, I still don't know what that is. That's why I'm not bringing it up at the moment if something does happen. But the moon going into Leo, going opposite Pluto is like, there's some power here. If you have any Leo planets, I've been trying, like I'm a Leo, I'm a 0 degree sun in Leo. So Pluto's going opposite my sun right now. So pray for me. All of the Leo planets have just felt like they've had to be a Leo more than ever. Because Leo is about being like in the center. Leo is about being in the spotlight. And Aquarius is like the crowd. And Pluto, there's this fear and corruption and power within there. And I think as the moon goes into Leo, our emotions are like, I'm an individual. Like that was the biggest thing I learned over the COVID part of this, because so much of the COVID stuff of like, you know, if you don't subscribe to everything the mainstream says, you're an enemy. And that's kind of been true with a lot of the culture war stuff too. And I've just really been like, no, I'm an individual. I can see things both ways and I have my own opinion on that stuff. And that moon going into Leo is like emotionally being like, I'm putting myself in a spotlight. Like the moon is our emotions. It's our vulnerabilities. It's in Leo. We're really connected to our ego. We're really connected to our will. We're really connected to our identity and how we're being seen publicly. And it's going to go opposite Pluto. There's going to be some fears about some stuff. Meaning like if you're like, hey, well, I think this way about something, it might be scary because you don't really know what the reaction to everybody else is going to be. And you don't know how they're going to manipulate and distort that to attack you with. And so I think on Thursday, as the moon goes into Leo and opposite Pluto, this is a power and fear moment. Like, are you going to, like, something that I've learned is like, I'm just really being honest with my own personal story here. I can't personally cave anymore to other people's whims. Like it's because that makes me a liar. And like, I think of that Napoleon Dynamite clip, that would make me a liar. And that's not what I'm about. Not now, not ever. And that's how I feel. So the moon going into Leo, going opposite Pluto is like, you know, you might be put in the spotlight on something and you might be very emotionally attached to that. And are you going to allow the criticism or what other people's thoughts or opinions are about you control you and manipulate you? Or are you going to say, I don't give a fuck and I'm just going to be me because I'd rather be fucking honest and hated than loved and a liar. So a lot going on there. The second thing is Mars is going to be trining Saturn. This is so really honestly, when you talk zodiacally, this has been happening. So like there's zodiacal aspects, which means, for example, Venus is sextiling Mars zodiacally. They're not by aspect anymore, but they are by zodiac signs, right? And that's like a more ancient way of looking at aspects. And so Mars ingressing into Cancer immediately started that Mars-Saturn trine. But this is when it perfects. This is when it's like, okay, Mars entered Cancer. Mars is about action, right? And it's in Cancer. I got to do something I don't want to do. I feel insecure about doing. It's hard to take care of, but I know I need to take care of it. And it's trining Saturn. You know you need to do it. You know you need to do it. Right as Mars trines Saturn, that perfects where it's like you have that helping hand come in where it's kind of like asking for help. Asking for help is really hard. Like, especially as like a man and I mean, it's hard for anybody, but when you have to admit that I don't want to say defeated, but when you have felt succumb to outside circumstances and forces and we have our ego and our pride saying, no, I don't need that. And when you have to really let yourself be vulnerable and say like, I need help. And you're not just saying it like, oh, I need help and, there's no one around. This is like, there's been someone here saying like, I'm here to help you. I'm here to help you. You just need to let me know. This Mars Saturn trine is like, I need help. And you're going to have to get over your ego. You're going to have to get over your vulnerabilities. You're going to have to be, vulnerable with it. And at least though, the help can begin. The progress can start to actually begin. You can actually start to move forward. And it's not going to feel good to admit defeat or to feel like you're weak or that you're not in control. But this is, and that might be an example for one person. Another example would just be like having to do something that you need to do that you don't want to do because you feel like you can do better. But this is just the opportunity where you have the help to do it. So, it's really good. Okay. It's just rough because it's emotional. It's rough because it's bringing up the things that we don't want to talk about. It's bringing up the things that make us emotional, that make us, again, like Mars in Cancer is crabby. Like there's nothing worse than someone that needs help and that doesn't want it. They're very insecure. They're very like, I don't need your help, blah, 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 blah. That's what's going on here. But Venus conjoins Uranus on this day. So I have mixed feelings about Venus conjoining Uranus with all of this going on, because typically I like Venus conjoining Uranus. Value, fun, connection, all the Venus things. She's in her home sign of Taurus, where she's like feeling like this is what I value. This is what I'm connecting to. This is what I want. As it conjoins Uranus, there's a disruption there. There is and that could be a good or a bad thing, right? It kind of just depends on what you're in the mood, for, what you're expecting. But I think as Venus conjoins Uranus, this is some kind of innovation or some kind of breakthrough or some kind of like clarity, understanding of like what it is that you want. And actually, here's a really good example. Do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Those are often the two choices that you get. And what I mean by that is like, for example, let's say you really need help and you don't want to admit it. Well, do you want to be right and say that you don't need help and suffer? Or do you want to be happy, which might entail you being wrong and saying that you can't do it, but at least you'll get the help and the assistance that you need. And that's like that Venus conjoining Uranus, where it's like something that I value is very disrupted. Something that I want is very disrupted. And do you want to be right? Do you want to be happy? Do you want to feel like, and that's like one of those things where it's like, well, if you want to be right and you don't want that help, you don't want that assistance, then you might have some valuables disrupted in a way that you don't want to take care of things. Or do you want to just be happy and not be afraid to, take on that assistance, take on that support? And I think with Venus conjoining Uranus, it's definitely a happy accident. Venus conjoining Uranus is definitely, having a breakthrough moment with what it is that you want. And I think, again, a lot of that is happy or right. Another way you could look at this is having a breakthrough, having a insight and clarity as to what it is that you desire, or desiring things. Like, let's say you're an artist. This could be a breakthrough day for that, if that makes sense. But there's quite a bit going on here on Thursday. And something I just want to recap real quick is like, think of January, where Mercury was retrograde, Mars was still retrograde, and then they didn't station direct till later on. We're in a completely different universe now. Like, that's something that I've been wanting to emphasize. It's just how much changes over March. I started in March saying, this is when the snowball effect occurs. This is when things are going. And I mean, by this point, we're in a very, very different place. And it hurts, but it's good. We get to Friday, and nothing's going on when I bring up the moon shining the sun. Very, very late in the evening, it will square Uranus. And so what I like about this is the moon is literally just trining the sun. Zodiacally, it's trining Mercury and Jupiter. Moon in Leo is some confidence coming up of being like, fuck yeah. Sun's in Aries, like the sun is exalted. Our willpower, our identity, our ego is very, very strong. The moon in Leo, we're feeling confident. We're feeling proud. We did the right thing. And I just think we're going to be fucking vibing all day on Friday. Friday's really good. Until you get to Friday evening where the moon squares Uranus, where there is this kind of like, pride cometh before the fall. So don't get too prideful. Don't get too full of yourself unless like you're also okay with like unless you can have some humility, but if you're so insecure and sensitive to where you can't have humility, this will be a rough one for you. But this would be a really good time to like, hey, I feel prideful, I feel confident, and have some humility, because I think as the moon squares Uranus, something's going to be disrupted. Something's not going to, it's going to trigger you emotionally, and you kind of just have to roll with the punches here. But that's Friday evening. It's not that crazy of a deal. Then we get to Saturday, April 1st. Moon is going to be squaring Venus early in the morning, and then it will trine Jupiter and Mercury. More better things. I really like also April 1st for an election. The moon, there we go. The moon is going to be trining Venus. Squaring Venus and trining Jupiter and Mercury. Also another great election. Oh, I didn't change this. Whoops. Parker. Whoosh. That now says April 1st. Anyway, the moon's going to be trining Mercury and Jupiter. As we have the moon in Leo and our emotions are very connected to, again, our confidence, our willpower, our ability to just like be who we know we are. The moon trining Jupiter is Jupiter in Aries. Like, yeah, like the more action that we take, the more confidence that we get, the more that we believe in ourselves. Like all anxiety is just you not believing in yourself and taking actions. Like if you want to eliminate anxiety, do stuff. It doesn't matter what it is, because the more that you do something, like for example, with YouTube, there's a channel called Think Media. Like if you do YouTube, you should be watching Think Media. If you're not, you're fucking wasting your time. Think Media is a great YouTube channel to get YouTubers started. And their intro, like little noise thing that they do is always, you just have to push record. As a YouTuber, I've been doing this for years and I still get like, I don't want to do this video or I don't want to record. But the second I just hit record, everything becomes easy. All my anxiety goes away the second I take action. Like when I'm in this moment and I'm here recording, or especially in a consultation, all of my worries go away. Everything goes away in my world, and I feel nothing but joy. I feel nothing but like greatness, because I'm doing the thing I know that I want to be doing, and I don't let the fears and the insecurities stop me from just starting it. And the starting point is always the hardest, because once you just get past that though, and you start and you go, you're gonna feel a lot better. And that moon trining Jupiter and trining Mercury is like, it's starting to all click here. Everything's starting to click. And the moon will square Venus too, where like a square isn't always bad, especially if it's like the moon contacting both benefics, okay? It will square Venus where it's kind of like, it may not exactly what you want it to be, but it is what it is, and it's good enough, if that makes sense. There's something like, again, maybe you and your friends want to go out on Saturday and it's not the restaurant you chose, but the restaurant you went to is fine and it's great. Like that's moon square Venus. Like, oh, I really wanted to go here, but whatever, we want to go to this restaurant and it's fine. You get over it and it's still a good time. We get to Sunday, the moon will ingress into Virgo, go opposite Saturn, and sextile Mars. This is really interesting to me personally, simply because we had the full moon in Virgo about a month ago, and that was when Saturn ingressed into Aquarius. But the moon had not, the moon was already in Virgo when Saturn entered Pisces, so they didn't actually aspect. This is technically our first moon-Saturn opposition with Saturn in Pisces. It's going to feel a little weird. It is. And the moon will sextile Mars in Cancer. The moon, our emotions, how we feel. It's in Virgo. We want to organize. We want to detail. We want to clean. It's like Sunday. What do I need to get my shit done? What shit do I need to get in order for, to have a better week next week? What do I need to organize? What do I need to clean? That's kind of like the feeling with the moon in Virgo. And it's going opposite Saturn in Pisces, where it's like, you're not going to, the more that you dig through the weeds, the more things will not be clear. It's kind of like history. Again, I think I mentioned this either this week or last week, but like I'm a huge history nerd. Oh, I mentioned this earlier this week. The more you get into history, the more it doesn't make sense. Meaning like you get to a certain point where you start to really connect the dots of how, the timelines. But then when you kind of go into this, you're like, wow, I don't really like, it just gets a lot more confusing. And you have to have like a much deeper knowledge of it to understand everything that's going on. And so the moon going opposite Saturn is like, hey, you might be really wanting to get detailed and organized, but Saturn's like, that's not happening. Saturn in Pisces is like, you're going to have to just roll with the punches. You're going to have to just go with the flow. And the moon in Virgo is like, no, I will oppose you, Saturn. If I just organize and detail more and more and more, then it will become clear. And that's not how it's going to be. But the moon in Virgo will sextile Mars in Cancer. So you're not going to get everything organized, but you can prioritize on the things that you do need to do, that you do need to take care of. Like, for example, if you want to plan out every single minute of your week, it's not going to work out. But if you can plan out, well, I at least need to take care of this. I at least need to take care of that. I think that you'll be fine. But this is going to feel a little frustrating of just wanting the answers and wanting the clarity and not receiving it, because that's not what Saturn and Pisces is about. Saturn and Pisces is about like applying your faith, like applying that knowledge. And this is Saturn. This is a restriction. Like, it's not going to be like, oh, you just have all this faith and it's so easy. Why aren't you doing it? Like, Saturn's like, you're going to have some restrictions with faith, and that might manifest as in like, well, I don't have faith, so maybe I just need to write down this list and these bullet points so I can feel better about it. And that's also not going to work. You just have to like apply the faith, and you may not know what it looks like. And there's going to be more restrictions with it, but that's when you got to lean into it more. So anyway, next week is everything. Again, we're still in the middle of the avalanche. Everything is still going down. Mercury enters Taurus. We have the full moon in Libra. We have Mercury conjoining Rahu. We have Mercury entering Shadow. We have Venus sextiling Neptune, which isn't a big deal, but it is a good transit. And we have Mercury sextiling Mars. So there is a ton of activity next week. So make sure you subscribe because you don't want to miss out next week's horoscope. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Boost it for the algorithm. Like this video for the algorithm and for me, because it actually does support me. If you want monthly horoscopes, live streams, ask me anything, a Discord channel, go over and check out my Patreon. It supports me. It supports the channel. And if you like the production of these videos, I pay someone to make them look really, really nice. So if you want to support that, consider becoming a patron. Also, I do consultations. Check out my website, camwhiteastro.com, and book a consultation with me to know more about your birth chart and what's up for you for the next year. So anyway, with that being said, I love and appreciate you guys, and I'll be seeing you next week.